the spark of arrogance. The chamber was immaculate, sterile, and neutral, designed to look like no species' homeworld, to favor no climate or color palette. A long obsidian table stretched across the center, surrounded by high-backed chairs fitted for beings with bodies that range from insectoid to bipedal. But it was empty now, except for two delegates. Ambassador Elise Tanaka sat with perfect posture at the human side of the table, a soft gray diplomatic uniform fitting her like armor. She didn't fidget, didn't blink more than necessary. Her eyes, dark as vacuum, were locked on the towering reptilian form seated opposite her. Emperor Zalvor, ruler of the Zorthan Empire, leaned back with a smirk curling the edges of his scaled maw. He wore gold-trimmed armor that had never seen battle. His advisors had been dismissed before the meeting began. He didn't need them. He thought himself a god among lesser life forms. "You're smaller than I expected," Zalvor sneered, voice low and guttural. "I was told humans favored projecting strength." Elise smiled faintly. "You were told correctly. You're still alive, aren't you?" Zalvor bared his teeth, sharp, glistening, probably for intimidation. Elise's tone hadn't changed. It never did. "This ceasefire proposal is beneath my concern," he growled, gesturing to the datapad she presented earlier. "You suggest I withdraw from sectors I've already conquered. You humans are delusional. They were not yours to take. The Free Worlds Coalition recognized those systems as sovereign," Elise replied calmly. "This is a diplomatic breach. We're here to discuss reparation, not surrender. You forget yourself." Zalvor rose, towering over the table. "Your kind joined the galactic stage barely a century ago. You speak as if you have the weight to dictate terms. We speak with unity, with law, with history, and with consequences." The room fell silent. Then he chuckled, a slow, mocking hiss of laughter. "You believe threats from an insect will make the stars tremble? You're nothing. You're a momentary noise in the silence of our reign." Elise tilted her head slightly. "I didn't come to threaten you, Your Excellency. I came to prevent your extinction." The laughter died. Zalvor tapped a hidden control embedded in his gauntlet. A soft hiss escaped the ventilation system above. Elise didn't flinch. "I've heard of your kind," he said. "Always calm, always measured. It'll be interesting to see how long that composure lasts under neurotoxin exposure." The gas was invisible, odorless, synthesized from Zorthan neurovenom. It would paralyze most species in seconds, kill them in a minute. Zalvor waited, savoring the moment. Elise simply looked at her wrist and tapped once. The air shimmered around her. Personal kinetic field activated. Her bodyguard, Captain Merrick Wren, burst in from a hallway, plasma pistol drawn, sweeping the corners before standing beside her. The door locked itself behind him. "Elise," he said, voice tight with concern. "I'm fine," she replied. Her voice remained as level as ever, though the skin at her temple glistened faintly with sweat. "You dare bring a weapon here?" Zalvor roared. "You insult the sanctity of diplomacy." "Save your indignation," Elise snapped, finally standing. "This was a neutral chamber. You brought assassination. That makes this a declaration of war." Zalvor's scales shimmered with rising heat. "No one will believe you. I am the Emperor. I don't need them to believe me." She raised her comlink and uttered 3 words. "Initiate protocol, Thanatos." There was a pause. A flicker of light blinked green on her wrist. "Transmission confirmed." Merrick gave her a tight nod. "It's done." "What have you done?" Zalvor whispered, suddenly less sure. "What was that?" Elise stepped forward, standing eye level only because of the slight incline of the floor and the Emperor's seated posture. "You've broken a sacred tenet of galactic order, Zalvor. No empire, no matter how ancient or arrogant, may strike a diplomat under flag of peace and walk away intact. You think your pitiful Earth fleets can touch me? We control 1/3 of the outer spiral." Elise's eyes were hard, cold. "You misunderstand. This isn't about fleets. This isn't about war." She leaned in closer. "It's about justice." Behind her, Merrick's wrist pad lit up. A message flicked across the display in a language no one outside Earth had ever deciphered. He glanced at it and smiled grimly. First contact confirmed. Targets neutralized in Zorak Belt, Drennan Yards, and Carthos Relay. 0 losses. Operation at 17%. Elise turned away from the Emperor, walking toward the exit. You started this, she said softly. You thought diplomacy was weakness. You thought our restraint was fear. Zalvor stood, suddenly frantic. Call them off. You can't do this. This is murder, genocide. Elise paused at the door. No, this is a message. Then she left. The chamber was silent again. The Emperor stood alone, and the stars began to burn. Protocol Thanatos. Admiral Claire Mathis stood on the command deck of the Ares Prime, watching the tactical display unfold like a chessboard from hell. Systems winked out one by one, not from failure but from total tactical override. Whole fleets went dark. Satellite constellations disappeared. Communications hubs vanished into silence. Protocol Thanatos had been triggered. She had known it could happen, had signed off on it. But now that it was real, she felt no triumph, only focus. Ares, she said aloud. The AI's voice responded immediately, smooth and precise. Awaiting strategic authorization. Primary directive engaged. Assassination of Earth Diplomat confirmed. Counteroffensive initiated. Standing by for optional oversight. Mathis hesitated for the barest of seconds. Then, autonomy granted. Execute full strategic sequence. Prioritize military infrastructure. Suppress command nodes. Minimize civilian casualties. Understood, Admiral. Initiating. Across the galaxy, the invisible arm of Earth's vengeance reached out. Deep beneath the crust of the Zorthan homeworld, seismic charges detonated in perfect sequence. Installed covertly during a so-called humanitarian mining initiative 2 decades earlier, they were now used for surgical precision, not to destroy the planet, but to collapse the military command grid buried within its mantle. Meanwhile, in the Zorak Belt, 5 Zorthan dreadnoughts prepared to deploy. They never launched. At relativistic speeds, human-made rods, pure tungsten, guided by nanite swarm intelligence, struck the dreadnoughts mid-burn, turning them into artificial novas. Not a single heat signature remained. From her med bay on Veritas Prime, Ambassador Elise Tanaka lay under observation, her vitals stabilizing. "Where are we now?" she asked, her voice slightly hoarse but steady. Merrick Wren stood at her bedside, datapad in hand. 17 major systems neutralized. Ares reports a 99.6% mission success rate. Civilian casualties estimated under 1,200 total. Most of them in emergency evacuation failures on Carthos Station. She nodded slowly. "And Zalvor? He's alive. For now. We traced him to a secure bunker in the Imperial Palace on Vraxis. Ares is debating whether to use surgical drones or psychological suppression to finish the job." Elise closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them again. "Not yet. He needs to feel it. Let him see his empire fall." "Yes, ma'am." On the bridge of Ares Prime, Admiral Mathis watched as artificial wormholes flared to life across Zorthan territory. New gates generated by human-designed gate-seeding pods. The pods have been placed quietly over the last 10 years in asteroid fields, gas giants, even disguised as debris in empty sectors. From them, Earth's ghost fleet emerged. Unmanned stealth cruisers, piloted by machine minds, moved in coordinated silence. They didn't announce themselves. They didn't broadcast surrender requests. They simply acted. Power grids failed. Atmospheric processors overloaded. Entire orbital shipyards detonated with silent flashes of white light as gravity wave weapons were deployed. Technology Earth had never shown the galaxy. The Zorthans had always believed the humans were backward, loud, brash. They hadn't understood. Humanity had been quiet because they were building. In the Imperial War Council chamber on Vraxis, panic reigned. "Where are our fleets?" one general shouted. "Gone." The entire Second Armada was vaporized in the Skara corridor. "Our comms relays are failing. Emergency routing is offline." Emperor Zalvor stood still at the head of the table, fists clenched, eyes wide with disbelief. He could hardly comprehend the reports flashing across the holoscreens. System after system marked as lost. Entire sectors silent. No species has that power, he hissed. They can't move this fast. They can't be this precise. They can, said a trembling voice from his left, one of his oldest advisors. Because they planned for this. For you. And still, no word came from Earth. No broadcast. No declaration of war. Because it had never been war. It was punishment. Back on Ares Prime, Admiral Mathis received a private message. It was short, from Elise herself. Keep it clean. No martyrs. No rubble. Just silence. Let them wonder if we were ever really what they thought. She showed it to Ares. The AI paused, its equivalent of contemplation. Revised directive accepted, it said. Initiating psychological suppression protocols. Within Zorthan High Command, secure personal devices lit up. Everyone with a military clearance received video feeds. 10 seconds of horror from 10 worlds. Impossible strikes. Surgical assassinations. AI mimicry of their own voices authorizing false evacuations. Their own war machines turning against them. No propaganda. No lies. Just truth. The truth of helplessness. Elise sat up in her medbed, her strength returning. Status update. Merrick handed her the tablet. Outer rim sectors. 94% cleared. Central core systems. Under AI lockdown. Palace network. Hacked. Zalvor. Isolated. A soft chime sounded. Elise tapped her wrist pad and opened a secure channel. Admiral Mathis appeared in holographic form. We've neutralized 87% of all Zorthan military assets. The rest are under AI paralysis. Remaining fleets are surrendering without engagement. Good, Elise said. Begin transition to Phase 2. Broadcast restoration offered to non-combatant colonies. Send food, water, and medical supplies. You want to help them? We punish the Empire, Elise said, eyes sharp. Not the people. If we leave a vacuum, we make martyrs. If we rebuild, we set terms. Mathis nodded once. Understood. Across the galaxy, Zorthan civilian sectors received aid drops from unmanned human carriers. No soldiers, no orders. Just perfectly timed deliveries with clear instructions, written in their own language. We are not your enemy. Your leaders were. The broadcast spread. Stories of precision, of power, of restraint. The galaxy, once amused by Earth's bluster, now stared into the abyss and saw steel. In his shattered throne room, Emperor Zalvor collapsed to his knees. Screens around him showed nothing but the sigil of Earth's diplomatic corps. A stylized olive branch gripped by a titanium gauntlet. And beneath it, a single message. You should have listened. The wrath of humanity. Smoke curled through the ruins of the Zorthan capital, Vraxis Prime, not from fire, but from the still glowing heat of precision orbital strikes. No radiation, no mass destruction, just surgical removal of what once stood as the core of the most feared empire in the quadrant. And above it, cloaked in silent orbit, floated the human dreadnought Ares Prime, watching. Below, the once impenetrable palace fortress now lay breached not with brute force, but with intelligence. Every security node was overridden. Every failsafe turned against its creators. Every sentry drone reprogrammed to stand down. And in the heart of the palace, Emperor Zalvor sat alone, knees on scorched marble, surrounded by the ghosts of his failure. On the bridge of Ares Prime, Admiral Mathis studied the feed from Vraxis. Target isolated, Ares confirmed. Combat sequence halted per revised moral directive. Awaiting final instructions. Mathis turned to the central console and opened a secure link. Ambassador Tanaka, the Emperor is yours. In a secure chamber aboard Veritas Prime, Elise stood before the galaxy. It wasn't a broadcast. Not yet. Just a direct feed to Zalvor alone. He looked up at the sudden activation of the comm screen. His eyes were sunken. Scales cracked. Pride shattered. Human, he croaked. What are you? Elise's face was unreadable. We were diplomats. Scientists. Traders. Builders. We reached out with open hands. You built weapons, he spat weakly. You hid them behind smiles. We built insurance, she corrected, because we knew this day would come. We just didn't know when or who. Zalvor laughed, bitter and hoarse. You think this is victory? You think the galaxy will thank you? They don't need to, Elise replied. They'll remember. The galaxy was remembering. Every species tuned in as Elise's message went live. Every screen, every broadcast hub, every deep space signal station. To the Galactic Accord and all member species. This is Ambassador Elise Tanaka of Earth. 2 days ago, under a flag of peace, I was the target of an assassination attempt during sanctioned negotiations. The act was ordered by the sovereign head of the Zorthan Empire. Under the Accord's founding principles, such an act is considered an immediate and irrevocable declaration of war, not just against humanity, but against diplomacy itself. She paused, letting the weight settle. We did not retaliate out of vengeance. We responded with precision, guided by protocols ratified and shared with our allies long ago. We gave the Zorthan Empire exactly what it asked for: accountability. In hidden bunkers across fallen Zorthan territories, shattered generals wept in silence. Some took their own lives. Others surrendered en masse to unmanned human drones, laying down weapons before synthetic judges who required no sleep or emotion to render perfect justice. They had prepared for brute war. What they got was calculated annihilation. On Vraxis, the palace gates hissed open. Human boots touched Zorthan soil for the first time. But there were no soldiers, no mass deployment, just 2 people. Ambassador Elise Tanaka, flanked by Captain Merrick Wren, walked through the silent halls, past frozen statues of long-dead tyrants, until they reached the throne room. Zalvor looked up, dazed. You tried to stand, failed. You came in person, he said, voice raw. Why? To give you one last thing your empire never gave anyone else, Elise said, her voice low. He narrowed his eyes. Mercy. No, she replied. Witness. She raised a small device and pressed a button. A 360-degree holographic feed activated around them. Dozens of Zorthan colonies appeared in live footage. People being fed, healed, offered peace. You lost, Zalvor. Not just your throne. Your legacy. The Emperor shook with rage. You think your species will rule? That the rest of us will kneel? You've only proven your monsters wrapped in silk. Elise stepped closer. We're not interested in ruling. We're interested in lasting. And the way we do that is by making sure monsters like you never rise again. She turned to leave. You're afraid, he shouted behind her. Afraid of what you've become. She paused at the threshold. No, she said. I'm afraid of who we'll have to become next time. Back aboard Ares Prime, the galaxy watched as the Zorthan throne room feed ended. Then another symbol appeared, the olive branch and gauntlet of Earth's diplomatic corps. Humanity will not expand by conquest, the message read. But we will not be conquered. There will be peace, or there will be silence. The message went viral in minutes, and the galaxy went very, very still. Later, in a private debriefing, Admiral Mathis met with Elise via Hololink. Global response is mixed, Mathis said. Some are terrified. Some are applauding. Most are very quiet. Elise nodded. Good. That means they're thinking. You think this will stop the next Zalvor? No, Elise said. But it'll make him hesitate. She paused, then looked down at her hands. I didn't want this. Any of it. Mathis studied her for a moment. That's why you're still the right person for it. Back on Earth, a memorial lit up in the heart of Geneva. A sculpture of Elise, not in uniform, but in diplomatic robes, now stood beneath an engraving of the Protocol Thanatos activation code. Below it, a plaque read, Peace through strength, strength through unity, unity through memory. And beneath that, never again will we ask permission to survive. Ashes and Accord. 2 weeks had passed since the Zorthan Empire collapsed, since its dread fleets turned to dust, its core systems fell into silence, and its iron rule fractured like ancient glass. In that short span, the galaxy had shifted. The power vacuum left behind was as deep as it was dangerous. But Earth was ready. Unity Station, a neutral diplomatic platform orbiting a dead moon on the edge of Accord space, became the seat of a historic summit. Over 90 species, ranging from ancient, crystalline collectives to recently uplifted water-dwelling civilizations, gathered. Most had never shared the same air or atmosphere. Now they did. No banners flew. No species emblems adorned the walls. Only the sigil of the Galactic Accord glowed from the ceiling. A broken circle, once symbolic of shared voice, now redrawn, sealed whole. At the center stood Ambassador Elise Tanaka. She bore no weapons, wore no medals. Her long robe was pure white, embroidered only at the cuffs with olive branches of silver thread. She looked smaller than the legend told, weaker than the being who had watched a galactic power kneel. And yet, no one interrupted her when she spoke. 2 weeks ago, Elise began, my life was nearly ended by an act of arrogance and imperial pride. The Zorthan Empire, once the most dominant power in this galaxy, attempted to assassinate a diplomat under a flag of peace. No reaction, no protest. The ones who might have defended the Zorthans had either surrendered or gone dark. In return, Earth responded, not with vengeance, but with protocol. A few murmurs passed among the delegates. Words like Thanatos, AI-guided, and impossible. Elise's eyes met no one directly, but her presence seemed to hold them all. You've seen the results. I won't recite them again. You know what happened. But I will tell you what didn't. We did not glass their cities. We did not take territory. We did not enslave their people. And we did not raise our flag where there's once flew. She paused, because this was never about conquest. It was about accountability. In the corner, High Arbiter Haskvar of the Cellari Confederation whispered to his aide, they wield the power of gods, and yet speak like judges. Others were less comfortable. The Valari matron's tendrils twitched nervously. The merchant kings of Uther had already sent private envoys to Earth requesting protection treaties. And in the back, the Trinari representative, long thought mythic, watched in perfect stillness. Elise continued, we were underestimated. Because we were new. Because we were human. That will never happen again. The finality in her voice struck harder than any weapon. Now, I stand here not as a victor, but as a representative of what comes next. She tapped her wristpad. A display unfolded above the dais, showing a new charter, signed already by dozens of species. The revised accord, drafted by humans, vetted by all who chose to contribute. This is not a replacement of what was, but a rebirth of what could be. Stronger, fairer, and enforced not by the power of fleets, but by unity of intent. A ripple went through the crowd. Included in this accord, she said, is the establishment of the collective tribunal, a standing council with investigative and enforcement capabilities. Every species will contribute equally. Every species will be held equally accountable. And the enforcement came a low voice from the floor. It was Admiral Kshan of the Arvik Dominion, whose fleet had once clashed with Zorthan forces. Will it be Earth? Elise turned to face him. No, she said, but Earth will be there, as will you, as will every accord signatory. Together. Later, after the speech concluded, a closed session convened among senior envoys. Elise, now seated and quietly sipping tea from a heat-adaptive mug, met with a small circle of key species leaders. Merrick Wren stood nearby, ever silent, ever alert. High Arbiter Haskvar leaned forward, voice diplomatic. Ambassador, this tribunal. It assumes that all species will agree to being judged by a collective standard. Yes, Elise said evenly. Some will not. I know. Haskvar studied her a moment. Then what? She met his eyes with calm steel. Then they will answer to the consequences. Together, if we stand for each other. Alone if we don't. The Trinari Diplomat, tall, translucent, and flickering with ultraviolet light, finally spoke. And Earth would act again, as it did against the Zorthans? Elise didn't flinch. If necessary. But we hope it will never be necessary again. On Vraxis Prime, what remained of the Zorthan hierarchy gathered in makeshift chambers, now under observation by human overseers and civilian aid corps. They would not be purged. They would be rebuilt. their children educated anew, their history revised, not to erase it, but to understand where it went wrong. Earth had sent not governors, but teachers. Their former emperor, Zalvor, remained in isolation. No trial, no execution, just exile, held in a compound designed by his own architects, now converted to a facility for reflection and remembrance. The last footage released to the galaxy showed him staring out a window at the stars, whispering to no one. They never fired a single warning shot. They just ended us. Back on Earth, Elise stood in Geneva, looking up at the massive monument erected in her name, a thing she had protested, but ultimately could not stop. At its base were the words, "Let none mistake silence for weakness. Let none mistake kindness for consent." And beneath it, carved into stone, Ambassador Elise Tanaka, Diplomat, Defender, Daughter of Earth. Merrick approached from behind. The accord ratification is complete. 86 species signed. 4 abstained. 2 left the room. She nodded. We'll reach them eventually. Or not. He glanced at the sky. Think it'll hold. She smiled faintly. Long enough to build something better. And for the first time in weeks, Elise allowed herself a breath that didn't carry the weight of war. The galaxy would remember. Not just the fall of an empire. Not just the vengeance of Earth. But the quiet voice that followed after. The one that said, "Now let's try again."